Hello, hello, hello. I am Knits for Sanity and welcome back to my tutorial on mitered squares. This is part 2 in my series. If you did not see the first part of my series, I strongly encourage you to go back and watch that, particularly if you are unsure how to create a mitered square. As a recap, for those of you who have watched the first, in our last episode, we talked about how to create a mitered square using 2 different methods. One method was created by using a knit 3 together in the center, and the other was created by using a knit 2 together 2 times in the center, which is this one, and this is the knit 3 together in the center. So if you have not seen it, go back, please check out that tutorial first. In today's tutorial, we will be discussing how you attach mitered squares together without having to sew them together. So this is a no-sew approach to creating a blanket or a scarf, anything that you would want to attach mitered squares together. So today's lesson, I will teach you how to do this horizontally, like what you see here. These are 3 mitered squares. I did not sew them together. Instead, I picked up stitches and then cast on more stitches in order to create the next square in my chain here. I left all my ends on here so you can get an idea of what the back side looks like. And I will show you this again after we create our first duo of attached mitered squares. All right, so let's set this aside. The method is the same for whether you use the knit 2 together 2 times to create your mitered square or knit 3 together to create your mitered square. The differences are very, very minimal, but the process is the same. To create my example, I did do the knit 2 together 2 times to create my square, but I will walk you through how you do it if you do knit 3 together in the center. So what I have here is a basically completed mitered square. As you can see, I am down to my last 2 stitches. If you did a knit 3 together decrease, you will be left with 3 stitches at the end. When you reach your last 2 or 3 stitches, do not knit those stitches together. Instead, leave them active like this. You are then going to find your next color. For me, I'm going to use this darker pink, kind of recreating what I have down here. And using this next color, you will knit your last stitches together, whether that is the 2 stitches like what I have or the 3 stitches. Again, just depends on how you do your mitered square. So I'm going to knit my last 2 stitches together and then pulling my ends of the yarns, the 2 colors, I got a snug little stitch left on my needle. I am not going to finish this square off now. Instead, what I now have is my first stitch of my next square. From here, what I will do is I will begin to pick up stitches. If you're not familiar with picking up stitches, I will go through this process relatively slowly so that you can see how I'm doing it. Now, my square was 30 stitches to start with. Remember, if you do a knit 2 together 2 times as your decrease method, you will have an even number of stitches. If you use the knit 3 together for your decrease, you will have an odd number of stitches. So for me, what I will be doing is I am going to pick up 15 stitches along this side of my square. If you have the odd number that you need, you can pick up 15 or 16 stitches on this side of your square. 15 stitches will give you a cleaner look, but if you do pick up 16, that would be just fine as well. What you can do too is you can kind of plot ahead and see where you're going to be picking up those stitches. All right, I am going to actually take my needle out a minute so that we can see this process a little bit better. So this is my first stitch. Then if you look very carefully, and I actually went through once before and picked up stitches, hoping to make it a little bit more easy for you to see the stitches we're picking up. But there is a garter ridge that runs down the side here. And those are the stitches you're going to be picking up. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then we will also pick up 1 down here in the end for 15. Okay, so I'm going to put my needle back in here, tighten that back down a little bit. So what I do is I hold my new working yarn normal, like however you normally hold your yarn that way. I look for where I will be picking up my first stitch, which is right underneath this garter ridge right here. I slide my needle underneath, I reach out, wrap the new yarn around it, and slide it through to create a second stitch. To do that again, I locate where I am picking up my next garter ridge, slide my needle underneath, wrap my yarn around it, slide it through to create a new stitch. I'll do another one of these and then I will quiz you. You didn't know there were going to be quizzes, huh? All right, looking at my fabric, can you determine where I am going to pick up my next stitch? If you said right here, good job. Wrap my yarn around, pull it through. Let's do that again. Where am I picking up my next stitch? Right here. When you are about halfway through, I encourage pausing for a minute and counting your stitches as well as looking ahead to make sure that you're on the right path. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches that I currently have picked up. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yes, so far I'm on my right path. If I were not, let's say I already had like 9 stitches on here, don't panic. Just work out in your head how you're going to pick up your last 6 stitches instead of your last 7, okay? Biggest thing you want to have is you want to have a stitch at the very beginning, which we already did, and then a stitch at the very, very end. The stitches in the middle, it's not quite as important how those are picked up. Yes, if you can pick them up consistently and the same, it will give a neater look, but really only to you. Other people aren't going to notice that. So if you now need to alter your stitches and how and where you're picking them up, that is okay. All right, so I'm just going to keep going forward here, picking up my stitches. I'm going to move it along a little bit faster. All right, before I pick up my last stitch, I always go through and count one more time just to make sure that I'm on the right path. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Perfect. All right, the last stitch that I pick up can be difficult to get. Don't worry about it. Fight your way through it. Just because it is a tighter one and it's harder to see exactly where you're going in to pick that stitch up. I like to pick up, do you see this is kind of like the knot on the end? I don't know if you can see that, but this is sort of your knot on the end, going one next to it, which is consistent with what we have here, and that's where I'm going to do it. It does match where I picked up my other stitches. Like I said, that last stitch to pick up can be kind of difficult. There we go. All right. I now have 15 stitches on my needle. Again, if you did a knit 3 together decrease in the center, you might have 16 stitches on your needle right now, and that is just fine. Once I have half of the number of stitches that I need, now I need to cast on the other half of the stitches I need. In order to do that, we are going to use a backward loop method. I will take my working yarn, and I'm pulling it a little taut, like this, between my forefinger and my thumb, and I kind of twist it under, form a backward loop, and my yarn is on there. So my yarn is going to go underneath the yarn in front, pull it a little snug. Underneath, pull it snug. Underneath the front, pull it snug. And I'm going to continue doing this till I have another 15 stitches on my needle, or 16 if you're using a knit 3 decrease. Whatever number of stitches you started to create your first mitered square is the number of stitches that you are going to want to have on your needle again for your second mitered square. Should probably give it a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. And just to double check, go through, count your stitches one more time. I know that I have 15 here. This is my last stitch that I picked up on my existing square. So really, if I just count 15 after, we're good. Yes, we are good. All right. I need to pause a second because I forgot my stitch marker. I'll be right back. And I'm back. You are going to want a stitch marker. I just forgot to have mine over here by me. All right, so now that you have the appropriate number of stitches on your needle, your first row is going to be treated just like your first row with a mitered square. From here on out, this process should be very familiar to you. You are going to knit 15 stitches and place your stitch marker in between, in the middle of your row. Or, of course, if you have an odd number of stitches, you will knit 16 stitches and then place your stitch marker, or whatever that even number of stitches is based on however many stitches that you have on your needle. So let's say you have 41 stitches on, it would be 21 stitches in, and then place your needle. So I'm just going to knit 15 stitches. The first row, after doing the backward loop cast on, pay very careful attention to where your needle is. Make sure that you are picking up the yarn appropriately, which is even made more awkward when I'm trying to, oh, it's not even in camera view. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, just take it slow and it will be just fine. If you cast on the extra 15 or 16 stitches, it will be a piece of cake to know exactly where you need to place your stitch marker, because when you reach your old mitered square again, your first picked up stitch, you will know, oh, my stitch marker goes here. I'm almost there. There are other ways to cast stitches onto a live yarn as well. If you have a different method that you prefer, that is just fine. I have just found that the backward loop method is probably the quickest and easiest for me. But if you have a different method that works for you, that is all right. Perhaps sometime I'll do a tutorial on different ways to pick up stitches while you're working on a live needle. All right, I am now 15 stitches in. I'm going to place my stitch marker and then knit through the rest of my row. Sometimes knitting up your picked up stitches can also be a little weird or difficult to do. Again, just take it slow. You'll be just fine. You really are only knitting, which you should know how to do with relative comfort by now. All right. Now we are going to pause because I want to show you. Now we have a very definite wrong side of our knitting because we can see where we picked up our stitches. Our right side, however, is neat. It is a clean pickup join right here, just like what we have right here. A very clean pickup join. Once you are done with that first row of knitting back and placing your stitch marker, you will continue to work this like you do a normal mitered square. Now, however, it will be even easier to know if the side that you're on, you will be doing your decreases or not. From here on out, your decreases will always take place on the right side of your fabric or the show-off side. You will never decrease on a side that is your back side of your fabric. This will always be your knit back row. All right, I am going to speed this up while I go through and finish knitting up this square. Why were you sleeping under the bed this morning? We just got a little rain earlier. Not a big deal. I didn't hear any thunder. Although I will say last week was rough. You learned that even when you think things are safe, that thunder can still come at any time, huh? Yeah. Just wait till you experience your first thunder with no rain. Oh, you're probably going to be a spastic, messed up mess all the time then, huh? Then we will knit this row back across. And now this is the last row that we'll be using this color yarn. We're going to knit two together here. Take off our stitch marker. Knit our last two together. And now we're left with just the two stitches. And we are ready to begin our next square, which, I can be any color that you want, but don't knit these last two stitches together. If you're going to have to leave this on your needle for a while, I would go ahead and take a stitch marker with the clasp or even put it on a cable needle. If you are like me and you work with circulars, even for straight knitting, you can carefully leave it on a circular needle until you're ready to pick up your next square. But as you can see right here, we got a nice join. 2 mitered squares together. Our back side looks like that. We neatly picked up our stitches. And we are all set and ready to knit these 2 stitches together, pick up our stitches along this side of this square, just like what I did here, and add on another square. Our next tutorial will introduce how we work vertically in a mitered square joining process. So here we can continue working indefinitely in a row, doing it this way. Our next lesson, I will teach you how to pick up stitches and work vertically, going this way. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel, as well as perhaps consider buying me a coffee. Link is in my notes below. I do put in a lot of work to do these things, and any money that is given will go right back into the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I cannot wait to join all of you again at a later time. Be kind to those around you. You never know what they're going through. Take care, and I hope you have a really, really good day. Thank you.